Welcome back. In this video, we will go over some crucial prep steps to perform a reconstruction update by sector. When I gathered my national data and organized them by year, species name, and catch amount in my working file, I had to pay attention to whether these data detailed sub-areas such as coasts, provinces, states, or islands. Since I want to follow the parameters established by the sea around us, I will work at the EEZ level. Olaland's exclusive economic zone was claimed under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, in 1982. However, some countries have not claimed their EEZ. If this is the case for your country, then the suggestion is to base your reconstruction on EEZ equivalent waters. When, on the other hand, an EEZ is claimed by more than one country, then what the sea around us suggests is to treat the overlaps as being owned by each claimant with respect to their fisheries catches. Remember that the EEZ is the ocean area that starts in the outer limit of the territorial sea to 200 nautical miles, covering most of the continental shelf areas down to the margins at which the slope of the continental shelf merges with the deep ocean seafloor. Within EEZs, there is also the inshore fishing area, which starts on the coast of inhabited land and extends out to a maximum of 50 kilometers or 200 meters in depth, whichever comes first. Okay, enough theory. Continuing the work with my national data, I also have to check whether the detailed catch by sector and/or gear or have high taxonomic resolution. This would differ from FAO data, which are assigned to broad ocean areas, reported in broad taxonomic groups, not separated by fishing sector and excluding discards. In terms of amounts, if FAO data are substantially larger than nationally reported data for the same area, after accounting for tuna RFMO data, I will assume that national reported data largely reflect catch within Olaland's home EEZ unless information exists to the contrary. I will, of course, verify this key assumption during the reconstruction process because such excess catch reported to FAO in a given FAO area is assumed to be taken outside of the home EEZ. Excess FAO data could also imply that a fishery or fisheries ceased or declined in a given year due to several factors, from natural events to quota setting, and this wasn't conveyed by the country to the FAO. Thus, I would have to research this. On the other hand, if Olaland's national data are larger than those of FAO, I will consider the excess catch to be unreported catch with respect to international accounting via FAO. This needs close attention and verification during the reconstruction process. To present the data in the working file in an easier to understand manner, I made a table to compare the annual catch amount reported in the FAO with the amount I found in national data. I found that the national data use different species names from the FAO names, so I also made a table to match the species names. I also prepared a table with catch amount per species per year, which I then added to the same table I used in the baseline checks Layer 3 tab. I also made sure to select the Excel function of removing duplicates. If a species shows up that wasn't there before, I will have to do some research to figure out whether the species was part of a grouping previously reported, for example, as marine fishes NEI, and what were the proportions of it, or whether its presence reflects the start of a new fishery in a given year that was not reported before. Once I have determined which numbers make more sense based on my research, I will consider those numbers to reflect my baseline data. One thing to keep in mind when assessing reported catch datasets is that sometimes the catch shows sudden increases that are not due to stock dynamics, to a new fishery starting, or to changes in regulations. These increases are likely due to improvements in catch reporting, meaning that agencies may have started reporting on a previously ignored fishery in a given year without corresponding past catches being fully corrected retroactively. To deal with this, I will have to find information on how much the reporting covers, generate a new estimate of total catch for the sector of the species, or use a measure of effort for catch per unit effort, CPUE. In the absence of information, I will have to assume the formally unreported component remains the same amount as in the last year before reporting improves. For example, in Olaland, sea cucumber catches have been reported since 2001. However, I found that catches showed an increase in 2009. I managed to find better catch data for 2008 onward. The amount for 2008 was higher than what was reported to the FAO, but pretty much matched with FAO for the rest of the years. This made me suspect that there had been underreporting before 2009. This assumption allowed me to find the ratio of unreported catch to reported catch that I was able to apply to previous years. When catch from broader groups suddenly drops, it may also be due to improved reporting on new FAO taxonomic groups. If this happens, then I will have to adjust the taxonomic breakdowns and match the species with the catch for family or broader taxonomic group reported previously for the EEZ of Olaland. In other words, I will have to 1. Identify the family of each species and sort by sector, reporting status, catch type, and family to determine the species to use for disaggregating a broader category for earlier years. 2. Take the average proportion of species for the first 5 years of detailed reporting out of the catch for this family if information is not available to disaggregate. 3. Apply proportions to catch currently at family level for all years preceding the catch disaggregation to the species level. For example, in Olaland, I found that tunas were reported under the broad group tuna-like fishes NEI before 1973. I then took the average proportions of the different tuna species for the first 5 years of detailed reporting, which is from 1973 to 1977. I then applied these proportions to disaggregate the tuna-like fishes NEI catches to the species level. I also have to remember that a sudden drop can mean that the catch from a specific fishery is no longer reported, so I have to research whether fishing still occurs and reconstruct as unreported if so. After dealing with Olaland's reported baseline and identifying missing components, I started comparing reported data with information found in the literature or internet sources. For example, I noticed that both in the FAO and the national data, information on subsistent catches was missing, so I set up to find it. While reading the previous reconstruction reports and addendum, I took note of the fact that I needed to find information published since 2011. I also paid attention to the types of information used and corresponding sources, particularly if they were regularly updated documents like annual reports. Subsequently, I visited the website of Olaland Statistics Department to look for census information and data on employment, exports and imports, tourism arrivals, per capita consumption rates, household income and expenditures, effort, and catch statistics. Other platforms that have been useful for finding additional data are university libraries, Google Scholar, Web of Science, ResearchGate, the Aquatic Sciences and Fisheries Abstracts, Aquatic Commons, FAO Agris, as well as those of international and intergovernmental organizations that have a presence in or agreements with Olaland and that report some data. Finally, I resorted to additional sources of information such as online travel service companies, which can have information on fishing tours and therefore recreational data, as well as gray literature, where I was able to retrieve information on events such as hurricanes, national disasters, epidemics, political crisis, and the establishment of no-take marine protected areas that may have affected fisheries throughout the years. All the additional information I find in these sources will allow me to create a separate table on the working file where I will add resolution to the data. This means that, in addition to accounting for more specific taxonomic groups and catch amounts, I will allocate data to the fishing sectors that are catching each species based on my research. As I go, I save all the sources that I'm using as PDFs in the New References folder within the shared drive that the See Around Us team shared with me. This includes web pages in case they're deleted. I also created a Word document where I list all of my references, point out the page number, and mention important details. Finally, I'm always keeping track of all the data that are missing and that I'm finding through other sources in the working notes document. Thank you for watching. In the next video, we'll go over how to update a catch reconstruction by sector.